Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. It's that time again where we do the meta predictions for the next big regionals, which this weekend is going to be Portland. Portland is the next major regionals after our recent big regional, San Antonio. And of course, the meta has evolved quite a bit, not only with the results of San Antonio, but just in general. I mean, we've seen online tourney results. A few decks from the Champions League are now becoming a lot more relevant. So we are seeing the format evolve quite a bit. And I definitely think the meta is evolving gradually, and we'll have to see where we go in Portland, because I think Portland will be a very impactful and a very crazy tournament, especially after the couple of, I guess, month almost we've had of our current metagame. Before we get into the video, if y'all are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below if you haven't already, and go ahead and leave a like in the video. Let me know what you think of the meta predictions I got for Portland. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be at Portland, but I am going to Knoxville next. But I definitely need to figure out what I'm playing for Knoxville, so the meta predictions and the meta for Portland is going to be pretty important. Now, starting things off, we got Charizard. It is undisputably the best deck right now going into Portland. Now, post-Portland, I think Charizard is going to get a little bit weaker. Not because the deck is, like, bad. I think the deck's very good. It's probably going to stay a top 3 deck in the format until rotation. But I do think that Charizard will not win another regional. I think the deck is going to be very popular. I actually think Charizard is, without a doubt, going to be the most popular deck in Portland. A lot of people are predicting that it might be 20% of the meta share. Even I'm kind of thinking that, too. Like, you don't underestimate how popular Charizard is going to be, dude. Not only did it just win a massive regional, it's also just a very easy deck to pick up and play, and it's also Charizard. People just want to play Charizard because Charizard's like the mascot of Pokemon right now. So like all those factors combine to make Charizard very popular. Pretty good chance it'll either be 18% of the meta or more this time like it was at San Antonio. It is definitely the deck to beat. I don't know if it's going to evolve any further. We do see the San Antonio winning list here that Azul played with the double counter catcher, the gloves, Vitality Band split. We know that there was some Tool Jammer Zard decks that did well in San Antonio. I think Tool Jammer Zard is okay compared to this build, though I think Gloves is just a better tool to play. But we'll see if Charizard can counter the counters, because I think Zard's going to have a humongous target on his head. I think a lot of the big decks this weekend are going to be very dependent on Charizard's success and countering it, and we'll see if Charizard can figure out different techs for the counters. I mean, if you're playing Rapid Strike, you might be playing against Zard with Jammer and Radiant Serena, or maybe Zard Jammers is good because it counters TM Devolution, or, you know, maybe Charizard's going to start playing more switches to counter Snorlax, because I think Snorlax is going to be a really good deck in Portland, considering how popular Charizard will be. And then, of course, we got Gardi. I actually think Gardevoir is going to see a bit of an uptick in popularity and play this weekend. There's a very good chance Gardevoir actually can win the tournament. If I am going to pick a deck to win, Gardi might be the deck to win the tournament. I think Gardevoir is in a very good spot heading into Portland. The deck didn't have the greatest showing at San Antonio, but I think the deck was still great for San Antonio. Obviously, Maron is still in the format, and Iron Hands in general is still lurking in the game right now in Lost Zone. Even Shenpa could have a bit of a resurgence. We'll talk about that soon. But Gardevoir definitely seems like a pretty good call for the tourney. Gardevoir actually has an okay Zard matchup. I mean, Zard's not playing Avery anymore. I think Gardi can beat Zard. I think all you really got to do is just be mindful of reversal. I think a lot of the Zard players won't know how to play against Gardi. I think that's one of the things when playing Charizard is you have to know how to play against Gardevoir. Charizard does have an okay matchup against Gardevoir, but I think Gardi can still beat Charizard if they can get going quick enough, because they have Reversal Energy, Shining Arcana Gardevoir, which destroys you. Not to mention, they have Counter Catcher Iono on your Pidgeot. Yeah, it's a pretty good matchup, I think. Or not good for... Well, it's not pretty good. It's a decent matchup for Gardevoir, is what I'm trying to say. Gardi can beat Charizard. It's actually one of the only good decks that can beat a lot of other decks, not just specifically has a great matchup against Zard. But yeah, I think Gardi is going to do well this weekend. I think a lot of big players are going to play it to counter the Charizard. I don't know what technology they're going to play, though. Like, what are they going to run? You know, this was the best performing Gardi list in San Antonio. It didn't play Zacian in it, but it did play Screamtail, 1 Avery, played a Worker. Is 2 Avery going to be the play? Are we going to see more of kind of, you know, Zacian? I don't know, but we'll see. I think Gardi is still a very good deck for this tournament. Miraidon's also going to be very popular. It's probably going to be the second most played deck, because Miraidon's also just a very straightforward archetype. This is, of course, Nick Robinson's list from San Antonio. And I think Miraidon's in a good spot. I think now people are gravitating towards the Peony build. It looks like the Peony build is the one to play heading into Portland, because in San Antonio, the best performing Miraidon decks were literally all this Peony build, and the Iono Path Judge build didn't have as good of a performance in San Antonio. I don't think that deck is bad either. I think, honestly, both Miraidon decks are valid right now. The Path build has a slightly better Zard matchup compared to the Peony build, but the Peony build does seem to be the best build. And honestly, if Gardevoir becomes popular this weekend, which again, I think Gardi is going to be a very good meta call for this tournament, I think there is a good chance we see the Peony build have a good run because Peony build, I think, has a better Gardi matchup because of Iron Hands. But yeah, I definitely think that Miraidon's still going to be popular. Probably going to be the second most played deck, to be honest, and there's definitely going to be Miraidon in top 8. I mean, it seems to just keep squeaking into top 8. And maybe we'll see Miraidon counter Charizard. I've, maybe been looking into, like, Tapu Koko EX in the deck to beat Zard, because that's really Miraidon's biggest downfall, is it has a pretty rough Zard matchup. And the Peony build especially really struggles against Zard, in my opinion. So maybe Tapu Koko is going to be something that people are going to start playing in their Miraidons. And, of course, we got Tina. Tina's the other good Zard matchup deck in the meta that's not Gardevoir. Tina doesn't really have any bad matchups. I think that its matchup spread is pretty even. Its most unfavored matchup, I don't even know, maybe like Radiant Charizard Lost Box, I guess maybe Rapid Strike if you're playing against a God. But overall, I think that Tina, it's a solid play. I personally wouldn't play it. I'm not a fan of Tina myself. Like, I don't want to play it, but I think that it's a pretty decent deck. Like, I actually don't know what to bring in this tournament. If you're struggling to find a deck, I think Tina's an okay comfort pick because it's just a very straightforward deck. At least you know that if your opponent flips over a Charmander, you're not just molding. You're going to be like, okay, like, I'm playing a deck that should be good against Charizard. Know how to play against the matchup. Pile the deck well enough. I think you're going to be having a good time with Tina. Tina seems like a decent call for the tourney. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw Tina in top 8 again. Maybe, we see Tina do well. I don't know if it can win the tourney. I mean, it almost went San Antonio, but we'll see if Tina has a good run. I think it's a decent play for the tourney. And then, of course, we got Rapid Strike, the other good Zard matchup deck. Now, Rapid Strike does seem like it's in a great spot. I mean, you kind of have that decent Zard matchup. You have a good Miraidon matchup, too. That's the other big thing with playing Rapid Strike is your Miraidon matchup's pretty solid, too, thanks to, Urshifu. And your Gardi matchup's not bad either. Unless you're playing against a God, like I said. But overall, Rapid Strike does seem like a decent play. It seems like it's a better Tina in terms of what it tries to do with its matchup spread. But the problem is Rapid Strike is very clunky and sometimes can lose to some pretty bad draws. Your bricks can be pretty awkward. The deck can sometimes be like an absolute just pile of a deck to play because it doesn't really have like an engine. Like, it has artillery, but it's not like Gardi or Charizard where you just kind of do the same thing every turn. You're just kind of hoping that your hand is playable and your next hand is playable. You know what I mean? That's basically Rapid Strike. But it is a very strong deck. I think Rapid Strike will have a decent showing in Portland because it still seems like a decent call for the tourney. Snorlax, I hate to say it, but I think Snorlax is going to have another good run this weekend. I mean, we saw Cal Connor go 9-0 day one in San Antonio, basically just showing to the world that, yeah, Snorlax is a great deck. And with how popular Charizard is going to be in Portland, I do think that Snorlax is still a good call. Now, there are some downsides. Giratina, Gardevoir are two decks that I think actually can beat Snorlax. Gardi, if they have Turo, I think they beat Snorlax every time if you play well enough. You're just playing against a good Gardi player, you're probably going to struggle against Gardi with Snorlax. But I think Zard is just not teching for Snorlax. Like, most people are just probably going to just same 60 Azul's list. Like, I don't know what you'd really change about the list. And that same 60 means that Snorlax, just you flip over the Lax, as long as you don't just kind of brick really badly, you should just destroy the Charizard deck and get easy wins. But the problem is how much Guardians are going to be. I think we will see somebody have a good run with Snorlax. It's maybe a deck that could even get top 8 just because of how popular Zard is going to be. But that's the question. Is Zard going to be popular? Will it be dominant like it was in San Antonio? There's two different cases where, yeah, the deck is popular, but can it dominate like it did? Now that the deck won a tournament, the cat's out of the bag, everybody knows the deck is broken, it's considered the top deck for this tournament. You know, the shifts can happen. We'll have to see how Snorlax does. It does seem like Lax is in a good spot. I know the Pidgeot EX build of Lax that also got top 8 in San Antonio is also being heavily looked at right now. Some players are even saying that's the better build over the straightforward build here of Snorlax. So we'll have to see on that one. Now, Lost Box decks, I think, are fine right now. Obviously, Iron Hands is a little sketchy, but Lost Box decks feel like they're okay. I think Sablezard, I'm going to kind of preach this. I think Sablezard is the best way to play the Lost Zone decks right now. That's not Giratina. I think that it's very strong. It has a great Zard matchup, in my opinion, if you know how to play out the matchup correctly. It also has a good Tina matchup. The only thing you're going to be worried about is Rapid Strike. Rapid Strike's obviously, like, unwinnable. And then, you know, maybe you're going to struggle into Gardi because Manaphy Jirachi is kind of annoying. But I think that Sablezard is still a very strong archetype, and I don't hate this deck. It's definitely a deck I would consider playing to Portland if I was going. It's a deck that I have on my radar for Portland myself because I really like the deck. I think it's a very strong deck. It's simple, but also effective, and I think Sablezard is good. I mean, it did win a regional for a reason. Other Lost Zone deck is the Glasses build. This seems to be the other popular, strong way to play these Lost Zone engine decks is the super effective Glasses deck. And I think that this deck is still valid for San Antonio. The deck has a lot of options. I'm a huge fan of these toolbox decks. And this deck is an ultimate toolbox. I mean, with all the different attackers, the Tropius, the Roaring Moon, the Hands, the Moltres, the Raikou, this deck is very, very powerful. And honestly, still seems well positioned for Portland. I don't think that the deck is like in, getting worse or better for, Portland. I think the deck is still just a strong deck for Portland. The one glaring thing about the archetype, though, is it doesn't play any copies of Sableye. Now, I don't know if you would be able to add Sableye. You already play 4 different energy types. I don't know if fitting Sableye is something that you can reasonably do, unless you want to just flat out cut the water energy, which maybe is the way to go. Because I do think Sableye could find a home in this deck post San Antonio. But I don't know. We'll have to see on that. But I do think that this Glasses build is still going to see some play. It does seem to be pretty popular. Had some pretty good showings in San Antonio, and I think it's actually decent. I think that this deck is still going to continue to do well. Then, of course, we got the Dragonite Kyogre builds. I do think Kyogre is going to have a bit of an uptick in popularity. It did do, well, it won the Champions League in Kyoto, and I think that the deck is very strong. I think, like, Moon hands Kyogre with, like, whatever other Pokemon you want to pair it with. Dragonite here seems like a decent option. I think that this deck is good, and I think Kyogre's gonna spike a little bit just because Kyogre's pretty good and it won the Champions League. I think people are gonna pick up on that and then play it. I think that the Moon Kyogre Lost Zone deck's also decent. I think we may see somebody get a top 16 run with this deck. Mark my words, it is possible for this deck to do that. I mean, it's got a good Miraidon matchup, or in theory, it should have a good Miraidon matchup, anyways, right? That's kind of the thing. And of course, there is the Tor Pile deck. Let's not forget about the Tor Pile. Now, Tor Pile didn't really do the greatest in San Antonio, I don't think, but the Tor Pile is still out there. It still exists. It's still an archetype that I don't really think gets worse or better with San Antonio. Maybe just kind of stays the same. But it is a very funky deck, but it's a funky deck that actually is, proven to be good. I mean, Tor did get top 16. And you could say, well, that's because Tor, he's the best player in the game. Obviously, he's going to get top 16 with a random deck like this. But this deck definitely does have merit to it. I mean, like I said, Kyogre's seeming to be pretty good for Portland. And I think that obviously that's, in the deck. The Giratina is kind of funky, but the Giratina works. I think that it's literally just a hybrid of like Tina and the Kyogre Moon deck. Like, it seems like a very weird pile, but it's a pile that does work. And I think that if somebody plays it, they could have a good run with it in Portland. Mew is definitely in an interesting spot. Now, I played Mew for San Antonio. I played TM Devo. I didn't want to lose to Charizard. I beat both Charizards I played against. Mew, I don't know if I'd play for Portland. I think that the deck is fine. It's okay. I don't think it's anything special, though. I think that it does have a rough matchup into the dark decks right now. Even with the TM Devo, I still don't think that Mew-Zard matchup is fantastic. Zard is going to be popular, and if you want to play Mew, you kind of got to go in with the mindset that, yeah, I'm going to play against a couple Zards in day 1. If I get day 2, more Zards. Also, Roaring Moon might be popular too. There's debates, and word on the street is Moon could be popular. We're seeing like the Turbo Moon deck get more popular now in online tourneys, and especially because of the Champions League Kyoto build, that does kind of warrant that Mew might get scared off by all these dark decks. It seems like it is a risky play, but Mew's not bad. We're most likely going to see a Mew in top 16, maybe even in top 8. Mew is just a deck people will play no matter what. I personally wouldn't run it again in Portland, but I can definitely see it having some kind of a run. Fusion Mew, I think, is better, but we are seeing this DT Mew build here that we saw Andrew Hedrick play in San Antonio be another decent option. I mean, you have that ability to have a little bit more disruption with Heavy Judge Path, and the Fusion Strike energy can go a long way too, especially if you're playing in Spiritomb. We might even see, Grabber, Luxray Mew be good. Like I said, Mew definitely is a deck that I wouldn't play myself, but it's a deck that will most likely still have some deep runs. Some players will do good with it, because at the end of the day, there are people that will just play Mew no matter what, even though there are big, scary, dark Pokemon in the format right now. And then, of course, there is the Entei Valiant deck, the other spready deck in the meta right now. Entei Valiant seems to just kind of be in the middle of, like, it's perfectly fine. It's not the greatest deck on the planet, but it's not the worst deck either. Personally, I wouldn't bother playing it, but I think that the deck is still decent. It's not bad, and it's like Rapid Strike. If piloted by a good player, it definitely can do well. It does seem to have, like, an okay-ish Charizard matchup. And, your Lost Zone matchup's not bad if we see a bit of an uptick in that. I think your Roaring Moon matchup's not bad either. I think you just have a decent matchup spread across the board. And I think we might see Entei Valiant still have some kind of a run. Maybe get top 8, maybe. I don't know, like top 16 maybe at the best. But I don't know. Entei Valiant's like not the worst deck. Not the best deck, but not the worst deck either. And then, of course, Shenpa. Now, Shenpa ideally seems like it's good for the tourney, right? With the popularity of Charizard, Shenpa seems like it's a good play for this tournament. And also Gardevoir. isn't. I mean, I think Gardevoir is not a bad matchup for Shenpa either. I don't know. It seems that Shenpa might be an okay play for Portland. It's crazy to say Shenpa was a good play for LAIC, and then unfortunately, at LAIC it didn't really do as good because it was positioned really well for LAIC. Like everyone typed it up, and it didn't do as well as everyone thought it would, and then it just kind of fell off completely. And now the deck is like kind of dead. Though with how popular Charizard is, it doesn't seem bad. Now your worst matchups are going to be a little awkward. I mean, I think your Rapid Strike matchup's pretty bad. Your Sablezard matchup's probably bad because they play Team Devo, and I also think you're going to really struggle against Snorlax. But I do think that if you're going to play Shenpa anytime right now, I think Portland might be the tournament for Shenpa, because if Zard's the most popular and best deck, Shenpa doesn't seem like a bad deck for this tournament. So I actually think we might see a bit of a uptick in Shenpa now. I do think there are the Shenpa people in the stands that will just play it no matter what, but I do think that Shenpa is actually better for this tournament than it was San Antonio and all the other tourneys. I could argue even it's a better spot now that it was for LAIC when it was like very hyped up. Golden Go is also getting a lot of hype. I mean, we are seeing this wacky Golden Go Palkia deck from Champions League get a lot more popular now because it's a cool deck. Now, whether or not the deck's actually good or people just play it because it's a cool deck doesn't mean the deck is great. I think the deck's like okay. I don't think this deck is terrible by any means. It's cool. I don't know if it's going to be a deck that can win a regional. Like if somebody came up to me and was like, yo, can Golden Go win a regional? I'm going to be like, probably not. Can I get top 8? Probably not. Can I get top 16? Maybe top 32. I don't think Golden Go is the greatest play, though. If Golden Go wants to get day 2, and by the way, we haven't seen Golden Go get day 2 yet at a regional since its release with Paradox Rift. If there's going to be a time where Golden Go wants to get day 2, honestly, Portland regionals might be the times. Now that this Palkia list has been solved and people are playing it, it's popular. I think there are going to be people that will play it for this regional. This could be the time for Golden Go to get day 2. I'm not going to lie. This could be it. And then we got Palkia Ice Rider, kind of the sleeper deck of the meta right now. It did get top 4 in San Antonio, though with how popular Zard is for the next tournament, I'm not too sure this deck is the greatest play for Portland again, because Zard does seem to be a really bad matchup. Even if you play Vulpix or, Articuno or what other, tech card you play, Zard still seems like it's a bad matchup for Palkia, but Palkia's not bad, but it does seem like it's not great into Gardevoir and Charizard. Gardevoir, I think, is also, it's bad. I mean, you have the Clone Cross Switcher, but I do think that your Gardi matchup's also pretty abysmal for this deck. I don't know. I'm hoping to see the deck do well. I'm a fan of the deck. Lugia. Now, there was a Lugia deck that actually didn't do bad in San Antonio. Now, the problem with Lugia is you lose to both Maron and Charizard. Those two matchups are pretty bad. Now, this build, the Iron Hands build here with Vessels, does seem to be decent, and it seems to be the best performing build of Lugia so far in this meta. Not the single strike build, not the colorless build, but the Vessel build. And the Vessel build seems to be all right. It's got the creds to back it up. It has decent performances. Lugia's just kind of sneaking under the radar right now. Is it a good play for Portland? Not too sure. Again, with how popular, stuff like Maridon and Zard are going to be, it does seem kind of scary. But I do like the deck still. It's got some cool plays. It actually does good against the decks that are not specifically Charizard and Maridon. I don't know if your Gardi matchup's very good, though. The problem with Gardi is they have Screamtail, and they can, Screamtail your Archeops. I mean, I guess you have the double Iron Hands, but not too sold on that matchup still, but I guess its Gardi matchup's okay. I mean, honestly, maybe playing a Manaphy would be bad. And if I do think Gardi is going to be a lot more popular this tournament than before, that might actually be a good time then to try to start putting in the Manaphy in the deck so you don't just lose to Screamtail from Gardi. But I don't know, maybe Lugia will do well again. Roaring Moon's on the uprise right now, I'm not going to lie. There is a bit of hype for Roaring Moon, especially the Darkrai build that did good in the Champions League. I think Turbo Moon's going to continue this momentum that it's been having, and it's been having these outside of the top 8 performances, and maybe it's time for Roaring Moon to break to the top 8. Maybe somebody's going to figure out a good 60, or maybe the Darkrai cross receiver build is going to be the way to play Roaring Moon, and it's going to do good. Cloth kind of seems like a meme. I think a lot of people default to the fact that Cloth beats Charizard. I don't think it just beats Charizard. I think Zard actually still is fine against Cloth if they set up Pidgeot. Pidgeot's really good in this matchup. If you're a Zard player and you're playing against Cloth, use Pidgeot. Pidgeot's very good. Pidgeot is very tough for Cloth to deal with. But yeah, I do think that Cloth is going to still have a couple day 2s. I mean, it's a meme deck. People are going to play it, but it's a meme deck that actually has an okay matchup spread. The problem with Cloth, though, for this regional, in my opinion, is if we are going to see a lot more Gardi this tournament, that's going to be a bit of an issue. Cloth has an abysmal Gardi matchup, and I think that that's one of the issues with playing Cloth this tournament is your Gardi matchup is really horrible. So if you are going to play Cloth this weekend, I pray you dodge Gardi and Mew. Mostly Gardi, though, because Gardi's tough for Cloth. Arc Piles are holding on right now. Arc seems okay. It seems like it's in the middle ground of it doesn't seem bad against Zard, but it doesn't seem great. But it gets the job done. a lot of the time your crutch is just Judge Path. Now, I do think that the Regigigas build that we saw was kind of cool, and I've been seeing it have decent results since I've played it a bit myself. It's not a bad deck. I actually think Arc Regigigas could have another run. I don't know if the 60 is going to change at all, but it definitely doesn't seem like a bad deck for Portland. I think we are going to see a random Arc Pile in day 2, whether it be the Gigas deck, we'll see. Though I think Arctina is on the cusp of being good right now. It's a deck I would consider myself for Portland. I'm actually just a big fan of the deck. I think the Superior is really good. This was the best performing build from San Antonio. It had double Superior in it, which was kind of crazy. And I don't hate it with how popular Zard is going to be for Portland. It's not a bad deck. Arctina definitely doesn't seem bad. Your worst matchups are going to be probably Rapid Strike and maybe Snorlax, maybe, and then, well, I guess you have Turo, but I don't know, Snorlax still seems kind of unwinnable or, like, tough anyways. But I think your worst matchup is going to be Rapid Strike and then probably something like the Giratina V-Star deck. And Maridon seems shaky. But, I mean, Arc can still do some crazy stuff. Arc can still win games. I mean, it's not a bad deck. I think Arctina could be a deck for Portland. It's a deck I would myself consider playing if I was going. Don't know if I would play it, but it would be on my consideration list. And then Urshifu Valiant, the secret underdog of the format right now. It had a good performance in Champions League Kyoto. Had a good run. Somebody did do well with it. And then obviously it's been having these random top 32 placements in the European regionals. Could it be time for this deck to have a decent performance in an American tournament now that people are giving it credit? It had a good run in Champions League. I don't think the deck is bad. I think if piloted correctly, if you play it well enough, because it is a hard deck to play, I think somebody can do well with it. And I think it is definitely a deck that can have a hot run in a major tournament. And then finally, my wild card is going to be Guja. I think Lost Guja is kind of underrated right now. I don't think it's the greatest deck ever. I don't think it's, that great, but it does seem like a deck that somebody could play and get day 2 with. It's my wild card pick. I mean, usually I'll pick like Zorobox or something, but I think Zorobox might be sketchy if Gardi sees an uptick in play. But I definitely like the idea of Lost Guja. It's a deck that, I kind of want to try out. I don't think I'd bring it to Portland. I'm not saying I would bring it to Portland, but I wouldn't be surprised if we just saw like a random Guja deck in day 2. Just saying, that's my wild card pick. But yeah, there you have it. If I had to predict what might win the tournament, I think Gardi will. I do think Gardevoir is going to be played by a lot of the big players that go to this regionals because it seems Gardi is going to be well positioned for this tournament. Charizard is still the BDIF. I don't think Zard is going to win Portland, though I think it is going to be the most popular deck. I think stuff like Tina, Rapid Strike, Snorlax are all good for this tournament too. Any deck that just seems to beat Charizard EX is good for the tourney. Though if I was going to Portland, I would want to play a deck that beats Charizard, but also can beat other decks. Because if you're just primarily trying to beat Charizard, you're not going to have a great run because I don't think all the big players are going to be on Zard again. I think Zard will be played popular. It's going to be popular, but all the big players aren't going to be on Zard. I think they're going to be on stuff like Lost Zone decks. I think Gardi is going to be a very popular deck that a lot of the big names are on. So definitely keep an eye on that. But that'll be it for me on today's meta predictions video for Portland Regionals. I'm excited. I might, maybe, fingers crossed if I have time, I might do a watch party stream for Portland. I haven't done a watch party before. They seem like they're a lot of fun. You just kind of sit there, watch the tournament, chat with chat. Seems like it's a fun time. Maybe I'll do a watch party for Portland, so keep your eye on that and the main channel and Twitch and stuff. That'll be for me. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know what your predictions for Portland are and all that good stuff, and I'll see you on another video here. Bye-bye.